They say the world has come to an end. Is this what the end of the world looks like? The stench was unbearable, although it was not surprising, because it was a sewer. Although even for the sewer, it was too bad. There was garbage everywhere, like packets of chips, cans of coal, or banana peel. Of course, in this world of the dead, there was no way without corpses, and they, too, were lying around. In one of the alleys of the sewer there was a young man who was our main character. He looked at all this ugliness and thought that he used to watch films with such a description. But now he has become an actor in such a world. A young man with white hair thrown back, a blue raincoat, black trousers and gray shoes walked past another corpse, thinking that he did not expect to find himself in such a place, very similar to the end of the world. Going outside, the guy with scarlet eyes looked indifferently at the sky, thinking that there were some oddities here. The northern lights shone with rainbow colors in the sky, and it was the cause of all this chaos. Adjusting the backpack on his back, the guy went on, through the destroyed streets, where the houses were without walls. When the glow appeared, the city was filled with werewolves similar to Wurgen. They were humanoid wolves of white light with red eyes. These creatures very quickly became a plague for the young man's city. Only the lucky ones escaped, and then after that they had only to hide and survive. Xiang Chen, our main character, was no exception. He was just an ordinary freshman who, in order to survive, hid near the walls of houses. Somehow, he was still alive, and he didn't know whether to thank fate for it or curse. After all, than to live in such a world, isn't it better to die? But it is not so easy to reject life, but everyone wants to live. It is so inherent in the genes of humanity. Right now, the young man was hiding from the Wurgens behind a trash can and wanted to go somewhere. One of the Wurgens sensed something and began to look around while the guy with a cold sweat was shivering, pressed against the wall of the trash. And at this time, a mouse stopped right in front of the guy and immediately a light bulb turned on in the guy's head and he apologized to the rodent and smiled maliciously. Grabbing the mouse, he threw it at the wolf and of course he was distracted by the rodent, growling at him and pounced on him. The mouse, who was in despair, cursed the guy, calling him a non-human who treats animals cruelly, but of course the guy didn't hear it. Seeing that the mouse had run away and the wolf was chasing him, he breathed a sigh of relief. Before, the guy used only dogs like that, and he did not expect that the reverse was also being conducted on mice. After making a few sounds to check the neighborhood, he decided that there was no one and then went on, and went into some store. Smiling, he said that his information turned out to be reliable after all. Survivors often look for supplies in stores and, of course, not many stores remained untouched. However, no one has touched the products of this store yet. The guy, of course, started putting food in the grocery basket. He even found the yummy food he was looking for in several other supermarkets. Found it here. With a blush from the excitement of the imminent sweetness, he carefully put the jar in the basket and went on. Then he suddenly remembered about his little one and thought about what he loved. And then, waving his hand, he said that he would take everything. There was a clatter of some animal and the surprised guy was surprised to find the mouse that he had substituted for the wolf. Now she was in the hands of a humanoid reverse, sing at him, saying that the guy was a scoundrel. The guy, carefully retreating from the reverse, said to the wolf that he caught the mouse too quickly. It's certainly not bad, but... The guy with a cold sweat on his back was darting his eyes thinking about what to do. At this time, the reverse threw the mouse somewhere and the guy, forced to smile, asked him why he threw the mouse away. Because that hot is small, but still it will taste better. And throwing food is not very good. A wolf with a reddened face growled and pounced on him, and the guy, clicking his tongue, said that unfortunately he was not a very easy prey for the wolf, and shouting that this was not the end. He took something out of his backpack on his back and lifted it towards the monster, said that he had a gift for him. Raising a white, fluffy, cute and small wolf cub with blue eyes and the tips of blue ears, although she looked more like just a cute cat than a formidable wolf. Having raised this wolf cub like a lion king, his child shouted back to approach him and not be shy. The reverse did not understandingly tilt his head in question, and the guy with a sweaty face said that it looked like this Uncle Wolf underestimated his baby. Enraged by this circus, the monster growled again and wanted to pounce on the guy with his claws on the edge. But he aimed the wolf at the monster and shouted for him to shoot straight at the monster. The monster was already attacking, as the spinning top began to draw in the air in the area. At one point the reverse also began to turn into smoke and was swallowed by the spinning top. The guy, smugly passing by the smoke, said that the monster was too arrogant. After a while, the guy returned to his house and pulling himself up cheerfully said that he had survived today safely and returned home. Sitting down on his sofa, the guy cheerfully scratched his pet's chin and said that today the little one was doing well, and for this he deserved a portion of goodies. The top started playing with the box, which is why the guy asked him if he liked this box. And the wolf nodded, sniffing at the box. The guy, looking for goodies for the wolf in his backpack, said that he got a lot more especially for him this time so that he would enjoy to the fullest. Picking up 2 cans of canned food, he asked the wolf, smiling, what he would choose, canned food for dogs or cats. The wolf turned around to see what his master was doing, but then he concentrated back on his box, and the guy said that he realized that the wolf was not up to him now. Picking up the box that the wolf was opening, the boy read the label and looked at the wolf with bewilderment and doubt, asked if he was serious about his intention to eat this fiber powder. The wolf growled at the guy with anger so that he would give the box back and not indulge in his food. The guy sighed and prepared this powder for his pet, which then this little fox or wolf cub began to eat with appetite and contentment. Lying on the sofa, the boy looked doubtfully at the disgruntled pet, and yet he ventured to ask him if he was a fox cub or a wolf cub. And anyway, even if one or the other, don't both eat meat. Why does this fox like to eat fiber from vegetables and fruits? And he thought to himself that it was a girly food for weight loss. Picking up the box and reading the name of the brand, the guy with a smile began to remember King Ling, saying that she loved this brand very much. He even remembered how she was going to spend on them. If she had refused that day, he would not have taken her to that unfortunate place. Looking at the ceiling, he sadly said that she would not have disappeared then. Then the moon was shining in the sky, and the sky itself was dark blue. The guy called her to the island of silver sand and followed her around in embarrassment. Stopping in one place, a beautiful girl with blue hair tied in one ponytail below the neck and reaching to the back asked the confused guy why he called her to this place. The guy scratched his cheek in embarrassment and said he just wanted to talk to her. The girl turned around and her green eyes met the purple eyes of the guy. She smiled shyly and began to wait. The girl was dressed in a simple white dress long reaching below the knees. She still saw that the guy was embarrassed, asked him what he wanted to say. The guy scratched his head mumbling, and the girl pouted, and then seeing that the guy was still looking away, blushing all over, turned back and blushed herself, calling the guy a fool. Then the girl raised her head and saw that the blue sky filled with stars began to shimmer with rainbow colors. The girl smiled and exclaimed that the sky was very beautiful, and then turned to the guy and showed him the sky and said that the northern lights appeared here. The guy, embarrassed, said that it was true and looked at the girl from under his forehead. Confused, she looked at the ground and addressed the guy by name. Then turning around, she said, Xiang Chen, that is, he likes the guy. The guy seemed to bite his tongue and therefore began to mumble, but then sighed and asked what she was talking about. The girl turned around smiling and shouted at the top of her voice saying that she liked Xiang Chen and that she wanted to be her girlfriend. The guy blushed all over and started to answer, but suddenly felt a sharp headache. Clutching his head, he pressed his lips together to dull the pain, but it did not go away. The surprised girl asked him what happened to him and if he was okay, but at that moment a light flashed around her, and seeing this, the guy shouted to King Ling to be careful. The girl wanted to get out of the light, but it was like an unbreakable glass. No matter how much she struggled and screamed, the glass did not break. The guy stretched out his hand, but because of the headache he began to fall and lose consciousness, and the last picture in his memories was how the girl was beating against the glass of his visa again and again. And when he woke up, King Ling was gone. The boy turned to his little white fox and said that if it wasn't for him, the guy would have been devoured by wolves long ago. He's useless, isn't he? The fox suddenly felt something and growled at something, and the guy, standing up, asked him what happened. Realizing that someone was approaching, he grabbed the fox cub and immediately leaned against the wall, thinking that it looks like the reverse is coming, because these are the same sounds. At this time, the fox cub in his hands screamed and there was a crash of the wall being broken. And the guy turned with shock and saw the monster and shouted that he was always unlucky, watched as the monster's claw was approaching him. The blow of the wolf on 2 legs crashed into the guy's face and he was thrown away, and blood gushed out of his mouth and eyebrows. The fox cub flew off his hand. The guy crashed into the ground while the fox cub, landing immediately taking a threatening pose, began growling at overgrown wolves. Several wolves had already gathered, and the guy, barely getting up and closing one eye because of the blood from his eyebrows, asked how these wolves found them so quickly. Coughing up blood several times, the guy thought that it looked like his internal organs were damaged, but there were more wolves, not less. It looks like he's definitely finished this time, the guy said, trembling. The fox cub growled at the wolves so that they would not approach, and seeing this, the guy with the last of his strength asked the fox cub to run faster, because he still would not be able to save the guy, but on the contrary to ruin himself. The fox cub began to absorb the wolves, turning them into smoke, and the guy, seeing this, shouted that King Ling he could not protect, and now the baby is also trying to protect him. He's just a jerk. While the guy was flagellating himself, the fox finished with the absorption of 2 and attacked the 3rd. The guy anxiously shouted for the fox cub to get out, and the fox cub, after looking at him, turned back to the enemy growling. The guy once again begged him to leave. The wolf swung his paw towards the fox cub, and he ducked up, but the wolf hit him in the air with his other paw, and the baby flew away, growling in pain. Seeing this, the guy anxiously shouted the name of the fox cub and began to approach him. Stroking the fox cub, the guy told her that she was too stupid, she could have escaped. The fox cub only growled at him. At this time, 2 guys were approaching them. The guy hugged the fox cub, saying that at least they would go to heaven together, and then the forehead of the fox cub and the guy touched and the light flashed. Then the guy found himself above the clouds and saw his beloved. Surprised, he approached her and asked her if it was her. Hugging her from behind, he smiled, saying that it was good that he found her. The girl with a gloomy face said that it was not good. Surprised by her exclamation, the guy asked what was wrong with her, and the girl said that if he hadn't been a cowardly weakling, and if he hadn't taken her to that damn place, she wouldn't have died. After looking at the guy with a murderous look, the girl saw that the guy was shocked and shouted that she should not talk like that. The girl, grinning, approached him and said that if this was not the case, then let him prove that he was not a weakling. Let him act, even if he is a non-entity. The guy, enveloped in a blue aura, stood up from his seat. Clenching his teeth in rage, he looked at the monsters with reddened eyes and steam was coming from his body. He rushed to the first wolf and grabbed him hand in hand. Her pupils, which had assumed a vertical appearance, flashed scarlet, and he growled at the growling wolf. The boy, pushing the wolf's hands, began to freeze them. The wolf's hands were covered with ice and the one who saw it growled in bewilderment. But the guy who turned into a beast growled even harder and bit into the piles of the wolf, knocking him to the ground in one fell. With wool in his teeth, the guy shouted that here he was, and in the guy's head the voice of his beloved was heard saying that here he was the brave Xiang Chen. She demanded that he kill them all. Growling, the guy pounced on 2 more and immediately cut those 2 halves, spraying their blood everywhere. Sighing with fatigue, the guy felt that someone was approaching him, and then his clouded head cleared up, and seeing the fox cub, he asked what was wrong with him. The fox cub dragged him by the cloak, and seeing this, the guy asked him what he wanted. The fox nodded and then turned around and went to the mirror image of the sky and clouds. The guy, standing up, asked him what he wanted the guy to follow him, and then seeing the surroundings, the guy asked the following question, and where are they? A bright and blinding light flashed, and the guy, after covering his eyes with his hand, opened them and saw King Ling. She hugged him, saying that he was finally back. The surprised guy, not understanding, looked at his beloved and also hugged her. At this time, the guy came to his senses and immediately asked what was wrong with him. Raising his hands, he looked at his palms, thinking about what had just happened. The corpses of wolves were scattered everywhere in the room. Some had their heads chopped off, some were partially frozen, some were cut in half. When Xiang Chen woke up, seeing this picture, he exclaimed in bewilderment about what had happened here. Looking at his hands, and then at the corpses, he could not believe that he had done all this with these same hands. He didn't remember how it happened, well, until now. Suddenly, memories flooded into his head while he was in Berserk mode and was like a beast that did not understand anything. How he bit wolves, chopped them up, and even how easily he did it all. Clutching his head, which was cracking because of the pain, he clenched his teeth and with difficulty uttered that how could this happen. In shock, he thought what he was doing. At this time, the fox cub raised his voice and the guy, seeing him, called him. The sky was dark and dark, making the stars shine brighter. The guy came out of his base with a backpack on his back and a fox cub in his hands. He carefully stepped through the streets of a long-dead city and walked to his new shelter. He had already prepared it in advance for emergencies, but yesterday he realized too late that they were attacked. Of course, here he also got a certain amount of resources, and looking at several boxes of goods, he thought that these resources should be enough for a while. While they are recovering, you cannot go anywhere and do not take risks. Sitting down in this pile of boxes, the guy told the fox that he told her to run, and she silly did not listen to him. The fox cub frowned and growled at him, and the guy in retaliation began to treat his wounds, which caused the fox cub to whine. Calming the fox cub, the guy said to be patient a little more. Examining the wounds himself, the guy thought that it either seemed to her, or indeed the baby's condition had improved a lot, and his wounds also did not seem as serious as the loss of consciousness. Surprised and delighted by this, the guy even more diligently began to tie a bandage on the fox cub's stomach and told him that in order to avoid infection, she needed to be bandaged. And then he picked him up and asked if the fox cub was a female or a male, although they had been together for so long, but he still did not know about it. Saying that now was the time, the guy wanted to take a look, but the fox cub growled at him and pushed him off and landed on the ground. Surprised by this, the guy in perplexity asked him why he was so angry. Then saying that so be it, not to disturb him anymore, the guy went to the shower and while taking a shower looked at his reflection in the mirror and saw that his wounds had already healed. Surprised by this, the guy said that it didn't just seem to him that his wounds and the truth were recovering very quickly. Besides, the guy felt that his sensitivity of his organs had increased a lot. If he had previously heard so, now his hearing reached several tens of meters in radius. It was also with vision and charm. Having opened the water so that his noise calmed down, he hit the wall to check and saw that a hole appeared in the wall where he hit, and there was a mouse sitting on the pipe, which in turn saw the guy, shouted in mouse that this bastard had appeared again. Surprised by this discovery, the guy began to analyze what he felt. The pain has passed, but a lot of strength has been added. Looking at his completely uninjured fist, he said, "Did he really change so much because of the baby?" Coming out of the shower, he thought, and then he saw that the fox himself was sleeping without the set legs. Seeing this calm picture, the guy smiled, saying that this cute creature was very tired. After all, they suffered a lot today. Covering him with a blanket, the guy said that although he did not know how he managed to get rid of the wolves, he knew that it was all thanks to the fox cub. After thanking the fox cub who was sleeping on the bed, he arranged his place on the floor and thanked the fox cub again. Suddenly, the guy in a half-doze began to hear his name, and in the dark, where it was impossible to see at least his nose, he realized that King Ling was calling him. He excitedly began to ask where she was, and King Ling, in response, asked him to save her and get her out of this place. The guy looked around anxiously in the dark and asked where she was because he couldn't see her. But there was no answer. The guy shouted a couple more times, looking for a girl, but of course there was no one. At this time, the fox looked at how the guy was suffering and repeatedly asked where King Ling was. Seeing the worries of the guy, the fox cub bent down on the floor and went under the guy's blanket, and, approaching him, began to rub against his cheek while he was suffering. At this time, this fox cub was King Ling, who looked at the guy with a reddened face while he promised that he would definitely find and save her. Morning came, and the girl was sleeping next to the guy. The first rays of the sun hit the guy's face because of something. He involuntarily began to open his eyes, wondering if it was already morning. Rubbing his eyes, he stretched and immediately felt something. Of course, he immediately realized that a man appeared next to him and, wondering where she came from, the guy did not know what to do. He was locking the door. How is this even possible? Slowly getting out from under the blanket, he looked with fear at the bump next to the blanket. Touching it carefully, he realized that it wasn't a guy at all. Then the shelter hit his head and he flew away from the place of the night, saying that there was a girl there. The blanket began to rise, showing that the stranger began to recover, and the guy immediately asked who she was and what she was doing here. The blanket fell off and a blue crown appeared, and then a beautiful face with green eyes. King Ling rubbed her eyes and looked at the guy uncomprehendingly. The surprised boy blushed all over, saying the girl's name. Realizing that he was not dreaming, he immediately hugged the girl, saying that it was good that she had returned to him. He asked her if she knew how much he was worried, and then shaking off his head, said that he would not let her offend anymore. And then he realized that he was hugging a girl who had just given birth to a mat. Out of embarrassment, he immediately turned around and asked the girl where her clothes were and began to justify that he did not hug her on purpose. He didn't know that she liked to sleep without clothes. Scratching the back of his head, he told the girl to get dressed faster, and he would not peek. The guy closed his eyes, but at that moment the girl came close to him, and the guy, still confused, asked if she was dressed, and then the girl started licking his cheek. In surprise, the guy abruptly opened his eyes and, surprised by this gesture, jumped back, blushing and asking what the girl was doing. Although he was bored and also wants it, but don't, because their relationship is developing too fast. At this time, the girl opened her mouth and exhaled cold smoke into the guy's face, smiling, because of which he asked her in perplexity where her icy breath came from. And then the realization came to his head and he saw the wounds on his arm and back and realized that it was a baby. He immediately grabbed her by the shoulders and asked about it, and she in response again climbed to lick his cheeks. The guy, confused, started looking among the boxes of women's clothing and finding one with one set, told the fox that he did not know why the baby was taking this form, but the baby should walk at least with clothes. You can't walk without it. And seeing that the baby was gnawing on clothes, the guy told her not to do that, and told her that he would help her. Calming himself with deep sighs, the guy mentally slapped himself on the face, telling himself to calm down, because this is the same fox. Isn't it abnormal to feel embarrassed about the attitude towards the pet? Doesn't that make him a brute? He averted his eyes, he began to dress her in clothes, and although he agreed with his thoughts, he could not help but notice that now she looked too realistic, and this figure exposes him to such a cruel test, and after all, he had just woken up. A little more and he would not have endured. Sighing and wiping sweat from his forehead, the guy lay down on the floor and said that dressing another person is a very painful busy. It's good that he finally managed. The guy was wearing only a white sleeveless t-shirt and gray shorts. Smiling, he said that it was good that King Ling's clothes were in the warehouse, but why would the kid turn into King Ling? That's what the guy couldn't understand. The girl was dressed in a beautiful pale blue dress with a bow on the left side of the dress. These clothes were on top of a white blouse. Looking at the fox cub in the image of King Ling, the guy just couldn't help but perceive her as the real King Ling. What the hell is going on in this damn world? The kid approached him and therefore the guy told her that he wanted to stay in a safe place and wait for help. But he had not seen rescuers for a long time, and did not know what the situation was in other areas. The baby also lay down, but the guy stood up with concern, said that he was worried about his parents and King Ling, and he now had new abilities. Was it for good? Looking at his hand, the guy grinned and, turning his gaze back to the girl, said that they still know too little about what happened after that mysterious northern lights. The girl also got up and went to the guy on all fours, and he continued looking at her, saying that now they have supplies and self-defense abilities, but still he is worried about his family. Looking at the girl, he asked if it was right to leave this area, if it would not be solved sideways for them. The girl happily lay down on one of the guy's legs. The guy continued, saying that if they come out, then maybe they will meet other survivors and learn something new. Looking through binoculars, the guy saw wolves walking on two legs in the roads. Seeing this, the guy said that he did not think that the whole area would be captured by these devils. Since everything is captured here, so where can there be survivors? Now the guy was on the roof of one of the buildings and was looking around for other people. Seeing that the girl was also looking for something, he asked her about it and not hearing anything in response, he approached her, asking what happened to her. Seeing that the kid was looking in one direction, he asked what was there and looked through binoculars and surprisingly, he saw 4 people. One was wearing a green t-shirt and a chestnut jacket with black pants, looked like some kind of handyman. The other was a girl in a pink blouse and a white skirt with a black bag, maybe a student or an office worker. Another one was only wearing a white t-shirt with black shorts and a backpack. This one was definitely a student. Another one was looking back with a backpack on his back, a blue jumper and black pants. It looks like this one was a student. Maybe all 4 students were running away from somewhere. Seeing the people, the guy exclaimed that they were survivors. The one who looked like a laborer shouted to his friends to follow him. But then a wolf fell from the sky right in front of them and they immediately recoiled in fear. And one of them shouted that there were wolves here, so there was no way to get through. Another panicked and asked what to do, because he did not want to die. A student with a backpack on his back and yellow hair raised up, shouted that he would not be happy without a fight. They would fight with them and at the same time the weight was trembling with fear. The one in front of everyone, dressed as a laborer, with dark short hair and purple eyes, shouted at the yellow-haired one asking how they would fight. They can't even knock down one wolf, let alone such a crowd. At this time, Xiang Chen and the kid appeared above their heads, and the guy with a baton in his hands shouted to the kid forward. The surprised student recoiled, and the kid used his frosty magic to freeze the wolf in front of the students, and the guy smashed it into small pieces with a bat and looked at the students and asked if they were okay with a smile. The students were all shocked by this sight and looked at this strange guy in a silent scream and turned and ran away from the fear of the unknown. The guy, not understanding what was wrong with them, asked the kid about it and she raised her shoulder, but at that time a huge black shadow appeared behind them and growled. Turning around, the guy saw a huge wolf under 2 and something meters. The wolf had some blue spots in the head and back of the neck, and seeing this, the guy said that it looks like this wolf is not like the others. The guy saw that the baby also clenched her teeth in tension and realized that the enemy was much stronger this time. And the aura around this wolf was absolutely frightening. The wolf growled at them, and the guy shouted that it looked like they had met a dangerous enemy this time. This huge wolf with horn, like bumps on its head, emitted a heavy aura, which even made the guy feel that his body began to move with difficulty. Standing in front of the baby, the guy took a pose. The monster growled and swung its claws, and the girl and the guy jumped away from the blow. The guy immediately told the fox cub in the image of a girl to freeze the wolf, and the girl released magic, but the wolf growled and moth sparks flashed that threw the couple back. With a static current all over his body, the guy barely landed on his feet and immediately felt that the difficulties with movement were related to the wolf's ability to lightning. The guy realized that if you get close to a wolf, then the body becomes more difficult to control, which means that this wolf cannot be attacked close up. Sighing, the guy said that he could only run, and grabbing the girl by the hand, he turned and ran with all his strength. After a while, they found themselves in some kind of shopping center with underground stairs. It looks like it used to be a fairly large mega market. Sighing with all his might, the guy calmed his heartbeat by hiding behind the wall of the mega market. Poking his head out, he saw that that wolf was still looking for them. Realizing this, the guy complained that this wolf is too annoying. Apparently, if he is not killed, he will haunt them forever. Scratching the back of his head and looking in his backpack, the guy said that they didn't have any weapons. He didn't even take a knife with him, so at least he could injure him. At this time, the little girl suddenly handed him a piece of processed ice in the shape of something resembling a dagger. Seeing this, the guy asked in surprise if it was an ice knife. Then the realization flooded into the guy's head, and he happily grabbed the girl's shoulders and asked her if she could create various objects with the help of ice. The little girl smiled and nodded her head. Overjoyed by this, the guy said contentedly that now he knows how to destroy this wolf. At this time, the wolf inside the huge mega market was looking around. At this time, an ice dagger flew at him from the hiding place, but the wolf easily beat it off. The guy smiled and came out of the hiding place, and said that Shaggy was surprisingly attentive. The guy had 4 daggers in his hands at once, and he threw them all towards the wolf, telling him whether the wolf could dodge several knives at the same time. But, unfortunately, the wolf easily beat off all the daggers and growled at him. But the guy did not lose heart, turned around and said that it looked like he had angered him and ran in the other direction. Running up the stairs, he saw that the wolf was quickly catching up with him, and therefore, he shouted to Tom not to run after him so quickly. The wolf, of course, only growled in response, catching up with the guy. While the guy was already standing on the other side of the stairs, the wolf almost climbed the stairs. Seeing that the wolf had almost caught up with him, the guy said with concern that he did not think that his huge carcass would be so mobile. But seeing that he was almost there, he relaxed slightly and accelerated. When he reached the place, he made a jump and jumped over the barrier, and the wolf followed him. The guy rode a cat made of ice and immediately went into the distance, and the wolf slipped on the ice and fell. The guy, seeing this, smugly asked if the wolf knew what a skating rink was. The ice rink started cracking violently and some places even collapsed. The wolf was in the center, but the guy was holding on to the edges. The wolf, perplexed, growled and wanted to get up, but the ice collapsed and the monster fell into a crevice where there was a trap of ice spikes. Having fallen right on them, the wolf had no way to stay alive and he died their hold. Sighing with relief, the guy said that they had coped, and then the baby came up to him. They barely got rid of one, and if there were several of them, they would have done that. The guy, smiling, praised the girl who was blowing in his direction with a cold haze. The guy said that he didn't think that the girl's abilities were so universal. The girl, or rather the fox, only growled contentedly and they both laughed. At this time, small lights of light began to rise from the place where the ox died. Seeing this, the guy wondered what it was and touched one light and immediately felt pain in several places, namely in 2 parts of the head. In the face, in the side, and in the hip. He growled in pain, which caused the girl to growl at him in agitation, and the guy clutching his head shouted that these things control his brain. His eyes turned red and he clenched his teeth. At the mall, Xiang Chen leaned on the railing of the cot, clutching his head with one hand, asking what it was, while the little girl gently grabbed him so that he would not fall. The guy growled that it was very hard for him. It's as if some force is trying to expel consciousness from his body. At this time, the girl saw the image of that giant wolf behind the guy, and the guy growled. The baby recoiled from fear and the guy, seeing this, told her to move even further away from him. The guy realized that it would be difficult to control his body, told the worried girl to be careful, and not get caught by his blows. With reddened eyes, the guy shouted at her to leave. But at that moment the girl kissed him and he blushed as much as in other things, and the girl surprised Marin pushed her gently and grabbed her shoulders, asked her what she was doing at all. His headache, which went away for a second, reappeared, and the guy pushed the girl away, told her to leave faster, because it started again. The girl approached him with caution. while the guy was trembling all over and his eyes turned red again, and 4 fangs appeared in his mouth. The guy attacked the girl, knocking her down, but seeing her face, he took his body back under control. Sweating all over, he shouted that control over his body was becoming harder and harder for him. The girl gently put her hand on his face and kissed him again. The guy didn't understand why the kid started behaving like this, and then he realized that the power that was trying to take control of his body from him began to fade. Is it really because he kissed the baby? When the girl removed her lips, his head started buzzing again, and realizing this, he growled. The girl under him blushed all over, and the guy thought that it was very difficult for him to restrain himself and therefore bent down again and kissed the girl. Silently apologizing to King Ling and the baby, he told them not to blame him, because it was all because of this wolf. After a while, all reddened, the guy sighed very languidly, feeling the heat and realizing that it was over. Then, when he came to himself, the guy immediately asked the baby if she was okay. She closed her eyes and nodded slightly. The guy sighed, saying that she seemed just tired. Then he remembered about that power and realized that it seemed to be able to take over his mind for a while. What it was and what happened in general. The guy didn't know, but lying like this and looking at the ceiling, he could only sigh. The girl was sleeping leaning on his chest and looking at her. The guy sighed, saying that it looks like the baby helped him this time too. He smiled slightly and thought that when he almost lost control of his body, he almost wanted her. As if sensing his thoughts, the little girl, still with her eyes closed, belched cold air at him and he immediately cooled down. Baby, even called a pervert. The guy just cursed himself, and then he realized something and immediately asked the girl in shock whether she could talk or not. Seeing that the baby could talk, the guy was delighted to ask why she turned into King Ling, or is she King Ling? The girl smiled and said that Xiang Chen wanted it that way, that's why she changed her appearance. The guy, upset by this answer, asked about what he wanted. And then he remembered that he often remembered before the kid about King Ling. And then he realized one more thing. Turning around, he looked at the girl and asked if she could read his mind, since she could understand what he wanted and so recreated the image of King Ling. The girl nodded, and the guy said sadly that he seemed to be fantasizing too much, because this is a fox, and not the real King Ling. Then he became interested in the story of the fox and he asked her where she was from and why she appeared here. The girl scratched her chin and said she couldn't remember. Sighing, the guy got up in frustration and hit the wall, and from his blow, webs of lightning spread, and the guy himself screamed about what had happened to this world. And then he noticed a web of lightning and looked at his electrified hand in surprise, asking what it was. Then he remembered that wolf and realized that it was an ability, that electro wolf. But where did it come from for Xiang Chen? Is it really because he absorbed his aura after the wolf died? The girl grabbed his hand and asked if he was disappointed and started licking his hand where he hurt himself. And the guy, surprised by this, said he was fine. Then he remembered the last victory with the wolf and a question matured for him. And therefore he asked the girl that after the last victory over the wolf, she turned into King Ling. And now she also started talking. Then he realized one thing. Delighted, grabbed the girl's shoulders and asked if their changes really depend on the number of wolves killed. The girl tilted her head and said she didn't know. The guy sighed and said that it looked like he would have to learn all this from personal experience. Then, after collecting the bag, the guy said that they had already rested, so we need to move out. The girl stopped for some reason, and the guy asked her what happened, and the girl said that if Xiang Chen liked her, then let him call her King Ling. And then blushing and puffing out her cheeks, she said that if she didn't like her, then let him call her baby. The guy, surprised by this whim, turned and walked up to her, stroked her on the head and said that he did not mind, and then calling her King Ling, said that they needed to go. The girl nodded, and they both walked on. The sky was clear, and it was a sultry day outside. They got out of the dilapidated supermarket and cautiously began to move forward. Holding King Ling's hand, the guy sighed and said that it was good that their fight did not attract other wolves. So they walked forward until the guy noticed one backpack. And next to the backpack were the corpses of those few surviving guys they met on the way. Their bodies were torn apart by the claws of wolves, and there were huge bloodstains on the floor. Sighing, the guy began to rummage through the things inside the bag of those guys and said that it looks like they can't be called survivors now. The girl looked at the guy who was rummaging in the backpack. And the guy continued his monologue, regretting that they could not help these guys escape. Apparently they came out here in search of food. Then they suddenly heard shouts in their direction, telling them to stand and not move. The girl and the boy both turned around and the guy, having fenced off the girl, told her not to attack. Two guys were standing in front of them. One had a bow in his hand and a quiver of arrows on his back. He had gray hair of a green shade, a black jacket, and a gray t-shirt with white jeans and black boots. The other was a black-haired man with a dagger in his hands and a backpack on his back. He was wearing a long brown raincoat, a white t-shirt and black jeans. The guys called their friends Xiao Pan and Xiao Fan. And pushing the guy away, the one with the dagger went to the dead, and the one with the bow was still aiming at Xiao Chen. A guy with black hair shaking dead friends asked them to wake up, and Xiao Chen meanwhile told them that they were not their enemies. They had just come here and saw their dead bodies. They were most likely gone before them. The guy with the dagger shouted that Xiao Chen had their backpack in his hands. That's for sure he had killed them. The guy with the dagger on the overhang shouted that he was taking revenge on them for Xiao Pan and ran towards them. Xiao Chen frowned and shouted that this guy was an idiot and used a newly acquired ability, namely lightning, and paralyzed them both. Those guys screamed, and the one with the dagger dropped the dagger. Xiao Chen canceled his lightning bolt and shouted at them, telling them to stop talking nonsense. They just need to look at Ronnie. Obviously, what could only a wolf have done? How did he get them with claws if he didn't have claws? Those two fell backwards with the release of electricity. Xiao Chen raised the dagger of the black-haired guy and pointed it towards this guy and said that although chaos is happening everywhere now, but they should not attack everyone with a knife. At this time, from the back of Xiao Chen, someone used firepower and enveloped his fist with fire attacked the guy. He was a golden-haired, bespectacled man with short hair. He was wearing a red t-shirt and a white jacket, and also a backpack on his back. At the same time, King Ling stood in front of the guy and shielded him from the fist. The fiery blow of the bespectacled man crashed into the ice-sown creatures of King Ling. The guy who saw that someone was controlling the flame was very surprised, thinking that he could control the flame. The guy filled his fist with lightning bolts, saying that it was necessary to calm this guy down as soon as possible, because their fight could lead wolves to them and then there would be no laughing matter. He went behind King Ling's back, calling her and pushing the ice, he broke it, which caused the ice to shatter into pieces and pieces of ice flew at the bespectacled man. The one surprised by the fact that the enemy has super strength exclaimed that it would be quite difficult to defeat them because they have superpowers. Xiang Chen filled his fist with electricity and rushed towards the bespectacled man, who, having got into this situation, clenched his teeth and caused flames in both hands to put a block. Xiang Chen, seeing the flame, jumped back and the bespectacled man, seeing that his method was working, increased the flame in the area of action. Xiang Chen and King Ling stood a meter away from the bespectacled man shrouded in flames and watched his next actions. When the howling of wolves sounded, the boy turned around and saw a crowd of wolves standing a few meters away from them. Xiang Chen clicked his tongue and said that after all, the sounds of the fight attracted the wolves. But the guy quickly realized that they were not their targets. The guy shouted that he needed to take advantage of the situation and run. Those two original guys screamed for help and the bespectacled man shouted for them to hold on, he would save them. Xiang Chen clenched his fist that was wrapped in lightning and clicked, saying that this is not a good situation. The wolves have already approached the bespectacled man, who turned out to be the teacher of those students. The wolf growled and pounced on the bespectacled man and then Xiang Chen shouted for King Ling to act and the wolf immediately began to freeze. It was covered with frost and then with ice after a couple of seconds. Immediately after the wolf turned into ice, the guy immediately hit him and broke him into pieces. He immediately found himself in front of the bespectacled man and shouted at them to move away, and grabbing the ground, used lightning to cover everything with a chain of electricity. Although the electricity stunned the animals, the guy realized that using the power of electricity greatly consumes his strength. At this time, his heart squeezed hard and the guy bit his lip. Not understanding why this was happening, the guy looked in the direction of the bespectacled man who used fire on monsters. After everyone was sorted out, the bespectacled man asked the students if they were okay, and meanwhile King Ling approached Xiang Chen, who was holding his heart. Then the bespectacled man turned to Xiang Chen and thanked them for their help. The one with the bow began to take out an arrow and shouted that the teacher was wrong. These two actually lost Xiao Peng, hitting him on the neck with the edge of his palm. The teacher shouted at him, telling him to shut up. If these two had killed Xiao Pan, they would have explained and helped them. While the teacher was scolding his students, Xiao Chen was squinting in pain. Seeing this, King Ling anxiously looked at him. The guy even spat out some black goo. Seeing this, King Ling caught him and leaned on herself. The boy's clouded gaze brightened again, and he saw King Ling's tear-stained face. Xiang Chen was lying in a cabin with a pale face, stroking the head of a crying King Ling. He told her not to cry because he was fine. Seeing that King Ling was pulling off his clothes for some reason, The guy asked her why she was doing it and she said, embarrassed, that she had not done anything like that, showing her hands for one thing. Raising his head, the guy saw a golden-haired beauty in a doctor's robe. She was lifting the blanket from the guy. The girl had beautiful purple eyes and she was doing something with his stomach. Flushing red with embarrassment, the guy thought to himself about what was going on here at all. For some reason, this golden-haired girl was untying his belt. Seeing this, he wondered to himself what she was doing at all, and then, coming to himself, he shouted, confused, why she was taking off his pants. The girl grinned, told him that he was not thinking about that, she was just examining his wounds. And then the girl smiled cunningly and asked a counter question. What was he thinking about? The boy, still walking slowly back, said that he was not injured, why check him? The girl giggled and said that he was also shy. At the same time, King Ling looked like a silly girl at all this. The girl, grinning, said that she would not take off his pants, and in return he should lie obediently. The golden-haired girl asked the guy if King Ling was his girlfriend, and the guy himself became interested, and he himself asked this question to King Ling. King Ling nodded, and then the doctor took her by the hand and told her to help her loosen Xiang Chen's belt. The blushing King Ling began to loosen the belt, and the golden-haired one guided her how to do it. This situation, of course, greatly embarrassed the guy and he blushed like cancer. Seeing that everything was in order, the doctor said that she hoped that after recovery, he would be as strong. And then putting her hands in the guy's stomach, she used her strength. A green aura enveloped the girl's hands, and seeing that the guy tensed up, she told him that she had healing abilities. Now she is restoring the guy's organs, so he should be able to tolerate the pain. The surprised girl said that the guy was lucky because he absorbed so much animal energy, but did not play into the box. The tormented guy could not answer in any way, only to scream in pain. After a while, the treatment ended, and all the sweating Goldilocks breathed a sigh of relief. She also said that everything is ready. She healed all his internal organs, the wounds inflicted by the attack of the beast aura. King Ling was sitting with the patient, and the patient himself was looking at the doctor. The doctor told him that she would go rest, and let them do what they want. The guy wanted to say something, but he saw that the doctor sitting on the chair was already asleep. Surprised by this, the guy asked in disbelief if she had actually fallen asleep. And at this time, the doctor opened her eyes and the surprised guy said that she woke up just as quickly. The girl, confused, seeing that King Ling tightens the guy's belt, asked what they were doing. The guy didn't think why she was so embarrassed, said that hadn't she told them about it herself. But the doctor was all red to the ears, turned around and shouted that she wouldn't bother them and ran away. The guy, who did not understand what the doctor was talking about, asked King Ling what she was talking about, what to continue, and in general why she blushed. The guy got up and left the room leaning on King Ling's shoulder. He saw a warehouse with a huge number of boxes and people who were dragging something on the shelves. One of the local commanders shouted for the 3rd and 4th detachments to conduct resource statistics. It turned out that this commander was their acquaintance with a golden-haired bespectacled man named Teacher Shen. The bespectacled man, seeing these two, said that they had already left. It seems the guy was well treated. The guy smiled and thanked him for his care. Teacher Shen, waving off, said that mutual assistance is necessary at such a time. At this time, a student approached the teacher with beautiful black, short hair and also wearing glasses. She was wearing a green skirt, a birch blouse and a black jacket. Sighing with fatigue, the girl reported what they had received. The teacher, seeing that she was suffocating from running, asked her to even out her breathing and calm down. The girl took a deep breath and with sparkling blue eyes, looked up and exclaimed that they had received a radio signal from Nanshan City. This news surprised not only the bespectacled man, but also Xiang Chen, too. Only King Ling did not understand what was happening and therefore looked at the guy. In the basement, in the radio broadcasting of the city where there was strange equipment, 4 people gathered. Xiang Chen, King Ling, Teacher Shen and the girl who brought this news. The black-haired beauty sitting in front of the computer did something, and a voice appeared from the computer saying that this was an emergency broadcast of Nanshan City. Starting in July, animal mutants began to breed in all corners of the planet. The city of Nanshan has also suffered a lot. With the help of the army, they managed to bring the situation under control. But due to the disruption of transport and communication systems, it is temporarily impossible to carry out rescue operations. This news was straight from the city of Nanshan, and the excited bespectacled man asked the black-haired woman if it was possible to contact them anyway. But the girl said that it would not work, because after the appearance of laser radiation, the work of satellite systems also failed. They tried to fax a letter to the city, but they never received a response. The enraged teacher screamed, asking how it was possible to stop at one attempt. We didn't receive a response, so we need to send it again. If you do not get an answer again, then you need to try again. Let them keep sending them messages as long as possible. Seeing that the girl was still sitting, he asked why she was still sitting. Let her work. The poor girl, upset by the boss's cry, nodded and began typing. Seeing this attitude, Xiang Chen was not thrilled, but decided to keep silent. The bespectacled man realized that he had overdone shouting, removed his glasses and massaged his eyes, asked for forgiveness, saying that he was a little out of his mind right now. The frightened black-haired girl said that it was okay, she would continue to send messages. The teacher thanked her for her work. Meanwhile, after leaving the office, he cursed everything and everyone and sat down near the wall. Xiang Chen, coming out of the office, saw the teacher's condition and told him not to worry so much. At least they know that Nanshan is relatively safe. The bespectacled man nodded and said that he was really worried too much. But this is due to the fact that people going out in search of supplies often began to die from attacks by mutant monsters. It would be fine. But not many people are very desperate in life, and some of them decide to commit suicide because of such enormous pressure. If everything continues like this, the people who are ambushed will not wait for their salvation. The guy frowned, as did the teacher himself from these words. And then the teacher, assuming a doomed look, said that he was afraid that he himself would not be able to withstand this pressure one day. Xiang Chen sat down next to the bespectacled man, advised him to look at the situation from the other side, because in these troubled times, when almost every second gives up, the two of them were lucky enough to become much stronger than the others. In these times, many have to sacrifice themselves, but still, it is impossible to save absolutely everyone. But this is not important, but the fact that he has already managed to save many. For those whom he saved, the bespectacled man is a real hero. The bespectacled man nodded, got up from his seat and smiled, stretched out his hand and said that his name was Shen Lu. He was a teacher of the second school of Nanshan. And what was the guy's name? The guy smiled, squeezed the hand of the bespectacled man, and said that his name was Xiang Chen. Her companion King Lin. They were students of Naki University. Looking down, the guy saw many who had school uniforms, and although he noticed it earlier, he didn't get a chance to ask, and now was the right time, so he told the bespectacled man that he noticed that many were wearing school uniforms. How did they even manage to get to Yansha Island? Sighing, the teacher said that they had come here for an excursion. Who knew that such a thing would happen? The teacher handed them drinks that he took out of the vending machine, and the guy took one and asked him if he knew anything about the appearance of mutant wolves. The bespectacled man sighed and said that he didn't know much. He just knew that a lot of people had disappeared on the day of the appearance of laser beams. The teacher, having unlocked himself on the railing, said that when he saw the laser beams, he lost consciousness, and while he was out, he was moved to a safe place. The guy became interested and he asked the coke-drinking teacher how Khan got his abilities. Smiling, the teacher said that he did not know himself. He had discovered this gift of flame control ever since UQ saved him. Realizing that the guy was interested in such questions, the teacher said that if he wanted more information about it, it was better for him to contact her. There was a basketball court below where the students were playing, and there, either as a judge or just as a spectator, there was a golden-haired doctor. The guy asked who she was, and the bespectacled man said that she worked as a nurse at their school. Although she is not particularly talkative, but the bespectacled man thought that the doctor knows quite a lot of information. The guy, surprised by this, asked why the bespectacled man thought so, and he said that she did not disappear that day, even after being hit by a laser beam. The teacher leaned on the railing again and asked them what their plans were. The guy said he didn't know, he just wanted to go out and see if it was possible to find out anything about this disaster. The bespectacled man, surprised by his answer, happily asked if he could join them then. They will protect each other. The guy, not knowing what to say, as if to himself repeated the words of the bespectacled man. Join their team, but is it worth it? Seeing the doubt on the guy's face, the bespectacled man immediately added that if he agreed, he would take him to Zio. At this time, a hard and masculine voice came from behind, telling Shen Lu why he was inviting all sorts of crooks to their team. All three turned around and saw a man in a dark brown jacket, down which he was wearing a black t-shirt. He had dark blue hair and narrow menacing eyes. Looking at the bespectacled man with displeasure, he said that he should know that they have limited resources and they do not need extra mouths. Next to this guy there were two other bodyguards, one fox and one aged. The bespectacled man smiled and addressed this man as Mr. Zio and introduced him to Xiang Chen. The bespectacled man wanted to introduce him, but the formidable man saw King Ling and whistled, asking why he had not seen this girl here before. King Ling was completely impassive, but this man continued to be rude, saying that he now understands the bespectacled man's intention. It turns out that he looked after such a chick. He wanted to touch King Ling, but an angry Xiang Chen grabbed his hand and said softly but menacingly, "Tom is watching what he says." He squeezed the guy's hand, which made him blush from the bet, and shouted for Xiang Chen to let him go quickly. Of course, he added a cliched phrase like, "You know who I am." And of course he also said who he was, namely, he turned out to be the nephew of the uncle who opened this school. He began to threaten Xiang Chen, telling him not to even dare to be insolent on his territory. The bespectacled man immediately shouted for Xiang Chen to let go of the pale-faced one, saying that his uncle was in charge of everything here. But of course Xiang Chen wasn't even listening to him. With a gloomy look, he was still slowly squeezing this guy's hand. The bespectacled man did not want all this to grow into something else and shouted that it was not necessary to quarrel with him over trifles. With a chuckle, Xiang Chen threw down his arm and stepped forward to King Ling. The bespectacled man immediately said that it was necessary to talk peacefully so as not to escalate the situation. But of course this man shouted at his two guards so that they would quickly teach this freak a lesson. The guards immediately agreed and rammed the guy. And that man, standing behind the backs of others, shouted to break the claws of this guy. The guards in green uniforms stepped on the guy, and the man thought that was the end and grinned. But after a second, his face turned pale, because two of his guards flew from both sides of him and crashed into the wall. Of course, Xiang Chen did not leave this man alone. He swiftly approached and in a rage grabbed his palm against his face, asking what he wanted. Break his arms. Of course, the bespectacled teacher in a panic asked him to stop and not get angry, but this time the guy didn't even listen. He grabbed the man by the head and smacked him right into the wall with his muzzle. Of course, his nose broke and his mind clouded, and a trickle of blood poured out of his nose. Clenching his fist and showing his biceps to Xiang Chen, he shouted that if he behaved like an oligophrenic again, then Xiang Chen, his mug, would paint the wall here. Taking King Ling's hand, the guy said that they were leaving. King Ling, on the other hand, looked with interest at the bespectacled man, who sat down next to the man and asked if he was okay. The moon was shining outside. Xiang Feng was sighing in the room, looking at his hand and remembering that episode. Why did he become so hot-tempered? Did the aura of these wolves affect him so badly? And yes, now the guy had a more important business than that. Confused, he looked at the floor where King Ling was sleeping and thought to himself how he could get the girl to get into the habit of sleeping with clothes every night for a guy is like another irresistible temptation and a test of the strength of his will. Suddenly the girl opened her eyes and blushing called him, and the guy looked at her eyes, which in embarrassment did not know where to go. Of course, it was just his performance, and he wanted to kiss King Ling, but she exhaled cold air on him, which caused him to instantly cool down. No, he didn't just cool down, but his face literally froze, and meanwhile the embarrassed King Ling lay down at his feet, saying that one should not think about perversions. The guy who melted the ice on his face, embarrassed, said that any normal guy would have reacted the same way if he saw her sleeping. The girl, confused by these words, said that she was not ready for this yet. The guy, hearing her words, suddenly realized their meaning. I'm not ready yet, but that doesn't mean it's going to be like this forever. While he was thinking about the future, the girl blew cold air on him once more. At this time, in the director's office, the man whose face was stuffed shouted that whenever he would destroy Xiang Chen, the office was made simple. In the center there was a workplace and the director's desk, on which there was a computer and some documents. The front one was a chair for those whom the director receives, and behind the table there was a huge window the size of a wall. On the left there was a sideboard with books and various working documents. Now that man was sitting in the guest chair and a doctor was standing in front of him and treating him. A man in a black tuxedo stood in front of the window and looked at the street. This man was complaining like some student, saying that this Shen Lu was just watching him being beaten. With a face full of band-aids, he told his uncle to send people with superpowers after this Xiang Chen tomorrow. The director simply said that it was just one insignificant little man. It would be too easy to destroy him. The man smiled maliciously and said that while his nephew had to be patient, first they had to execute their plan, then they could destroy him. Lying on the bed in his room, the guy was thinking about his parents. Although they should be safe, at least he believed in it. Although his faith can be justified by the fact that his parents work at military bases where troops are stationed. While he was thinking about it, King Ling, who was sleeping next to him, mentally told Xiang Chen to hug her. In turn, the guy looked at the girl and did not understand whether she was a baby or King Ling. If the baby is where King Ling has gone, does she know it? Looking at the calmly snuffling girl next to him, the guy mentally said that how many times he dreamed that he would be able to sleep with King Ling. but never when he did not think that it would be so. Smiling, the guy thought that although he did not know if she was a fox or King Ling, but in the end, he could consider it as the fulfillment of one of his desires. Kissing the girl's forehead, the guy wished her good night. The next day, when the birds were singing outside, inside the room, Xiang Chen was tense to the point of not being able to. Well, in principle, everything is as always. Of course, Xiang Chen didn't sleep all night. How in general a normal man can fall asleep in such a situation? Xiang Chen thought it was impossible. The guy didn't even know if it was happiness or torture, because a beauty was sleeping next to him straight from his dreams. But he couldn't touch her. Slapping himself on the forehead, the boy left their room, which was a handkerchief, thinking about what would happen if one day he still could not restrain himself. Adam's apple is pretty tempting, isn't it? Coming out of the tent on the roof, he saw that doctor with golden hair who hung yellow bed linen. Surprised by this, he decided to say hello to the school doctor. After greeting her, the girl also greeted him, but somehow the greeting turned out to be crumpled. To dilute the situation, the guy decided to introduce himself completely and said that his name was Xiang Chen and thanked her for treating him yesterday. The girl, somehow very embarrassed and said that it was not worth the thanks, and feeling not clever, she immediately said that if the guy had no business with her, then she would go. The guy, surprised by such a rush of the doctor, still decided to ask about radiation, so he stopped her. The girl stopped for a second looking at him in bewilderment and asked what kind of radiation he was talking about. The guy said that it was the laser beams, because of which many people disappeared that evil night. Then he added that he had heard from the bespectacled man that she was the one who did not disappear after the laser beam. The girl suddenly closed her eyes and then fainted, falling into his embrace. He grabbed her so she wouldn't fall to the floor, but he didn't understand what was going on. And of course he asked a question about it, not even believing what he had just seen. He asked the already sleeping doctor if she could really fall asleep so easily. And then, after taking a closer look, the guy said that if you take a good look at her, she's pretty beautiful. The girl woke up again and got up from the guy's chest, saw his bags under his eyes and grinned and said that he should rest better. He should look at his bruises under his eyes. Didn't he and that little girl work hard last night? Stroking the guy's face, she added that young people should be able to restrain themselves. Wouldn't it be too troublesome to look for a woman after you leave a little girlfriend? The guy, smiling uncomfortably, moved away and said that she had misunderstood everything. And then he said mentally, saying that he was just watching and that was it. And then, when he came to himself, he looked at the doctor who had changed so dramatically. How can a person change so dramatically and pretend like he's just flipping through a book? She just had pain. And now, the girl looked at him, asking if she was wrong, and started stroking his piles. The guy, who already had his back against the wall, panicked, said that he had not done anything like that, but he could control himself. And then, embarrassed, he added that he felt a chill down his back. At this time, turning around, he realized that King Ling saw what he was doing. She was now pouting in both cheeks and looking at him very viciously with her fists clenched. Taking the guy by the waist and taking him away from the doctor, she glared at the doctor and shouted at her not to teach Xiang Chen bad things, and the doctor only laughed at this cute possessiveness complex. The doctor, smiling, asked King Ling why she was holding the guy so tightly, who had already frozen because of her abilities, and then the doctor added that she would not take him away from the girl. But King Ling, not believing her, hugged a piece of ice in which there was a guy. Chuckling, the doctor adjusted her bangs under her ear and said that she would no longer tease her, and then added that she could tell him everything she knew about radiation. Speaking, she went towards the roof railing and added that she had one condition in return. The guy, who had just been melted from ice, with difficulty listened to the words of the doctor. Xiang Chen asked what conditions she was talking about, and she smiled and said that she wanted to be with him. This of course shocked the guy, but King Ling pouted even more. The doctor, smiling, said that although she has the ability, but she does not have the ability to fight. Leaning forward, the girl continued to say that therefore, of course, she must find a reliable man who would protect her. The guy, still confused, asked if this teacher Shen Lu didn't have the ability, why wouldn't the doctor poke him? They're still colleagues, so it would be better. Why would she look for a stranger like him? Approaching the guy almost closely and poking him with her finger, the girl said that because he has a third-party program. The guy, not understanding what she was talking about, said that what kind of program she was talking about, it wasn't some kind of game. The girl put her palm on her cheek and said that after radiation, many people had abilities. Then she added that Shen Lu had just one of many supernatural powers that had awakened naturally. Such people can only increase their strength through physical exercise, and their progress is very slow. But Xiang Chen is not like that. He can quickly improve his abilities by hunting monsters, because he has an ability that allows him to make a contract with werewolves. So he's the same as the monsters. He has a program that absorbs the powers and souls of slain monsters. This revelation of course shocked the guy. No, if you think about it carefully, it's quite logical, because he concluded something like a contract with a fox, and a fox does not seem to be a simple animal, it is definitely mutated. But it was still shocking for Xiang Chen. He asked the girl about it and the doctor, smiling, said that her little monster girlfriend was an example. Didn't she tell him anything? The surprised guy asked King Ling if she had signed a contract with him or any kind of contract so that he would have such an ability. The girl, looking away, said that it seemed so. The guy moved away from the girl a little and asked her if she was reversed. Then where was King Ling? King Ling looked at him a little guiltily, and the doctor added that she might be King Ling. The guy, not understanding, asked how this could be. She was a white fox before. The doctor, folding her arms under her chest, said that in fact no one disappeared after the other world. Just some people became werewolves. Another revelation that shocked the guy, because if it's true, then all those wolves are people. That is, were. The guy couldn't stand such thoughts, shouted about what the hell was going on here. The doctor turned around and shook her finger, and told him to wait a little, and then walking up to him lifted his chin and said that he had not yet promised her that he would protect her. How much preliminary information does the guy want? After saying goodbye to them, she said that she needed to go, and also at the end added that he needed to think carefully about her conditions. And she will go to bed first. She fell back on the piles of the guy and instantly fell asleep. The guy asked her to wait a little longer, but she was already asleep. King Ling began to tickle the doctor's ear, and she soon woke up all flushed. Seeing this, the guy said that she woke up, but the doctor only screamed at the top of her voice and clutching her red face ran. The guy asked her to wait, but she wouldn't listen. The guy had many more questions, but the doctor slammed the door in the roof and left. Remembering this situation, the guy did not understand what it was at all, and meanwhile King Ling began to tickle him with the tips of her hair. The guy looked at King Ling, who was holding his hand and playing with the tips of her hair with her other hand. He said that if Yu Kai was telling the truth, then maybe King Ling is King Ling. And after that, a recent thought crept into his head. Weren't all the werewolves he killed human? At this time, the roof door opened and a bespectacled teacher came in here. For some reason, he looked very angry and was heading towards him with clenched fists. Turning around and seeing him, he realized that the bespectacled man was worried about something. Teacher Shen asked him if he could help him in the search. Xiang Chen asked him what was the matter, and the bespectacled man said that school principal Xiao wanted to see him. And now they were walking to the director's office. The bespectacled man, a little uncertainly, said that it was after the meeting of the director, but could he? The guy, seeing that he was worried about the recent incident, and therefore smiling, said that he could not worry. He will try his best to restrain himself, he will not cause trouble. Sighing with relief, the bespectacled man thanked him and said that well, then they should come in. Then he knocked on the door and told the principal that it was teacher Shen Lu, and a bass voice came from inside, telling them to come in.